And was your court at the trial of Visser constituted in any way like this? What rule did you shoot him under?
Like this? Oh, no, sir, no, it wasn't quite like this. No, sir, it wasn't quite so handsome. And as for rules, we didn't carry military manuals around with us. We were out on the veldt, fighting the Boer, the way he fought us. I'll tell you what rule we applied, sir. We applied Rule 303. We caught them, and we shot them under Rule 303.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
I'm feeling Friday good. How are you, Ryan?
Oh, I feel like 10 years of my life have been lifted off of my shoulders. I had some very good news today. I haven't even broken this to you before we recorded.
No, you haven't. You're saying a lot of words.
I found out that Star Trek Discovery is finally ending. So my life is 10 times better now.
I was actually...
The fifth season is the final season. This has nothing to do with what we're going to be doing today, but I needed to share that joy.
Literally
much joy.
Literally 4.5 hours ago, I was talking to someone who was bitching at me about how much he hates Star Trek Discovery.
Well, you could share the good news with them.
I guess I can.
It's going to be over now. And the final seasons, one of the lead characters is played by acclaimed director David Cronenberg, and he has a mission. This is true. The trailer is, he's found an ancient Rubik's Cube. This is true.
Mm-hmm.
And he needs Discovery to solve it or the universe will end.
And he's going to use a dangerous method.
I wonder why they're ending the show. But either way, we have our own show where we talk about movies. We're Spit and Polish, and we present to you our podcast. We're spitting because we're just such handsome young gentlemen who have such articulate phrases in the Polish language, no less. Bartek, we are both of Polish descent, and I just want to know, is there any particular, say, Polish colloquialism that you like or are you familiar with in any way, shape, or form? Any Polish colloquialisms, any kind of slang or anything of that nature at all? I know that you're not the most versed, but anything?
It's too racist to say.
You only know the racist terms. Wow. Are you saying Poland and racism go hand in hand? I
wonder why.
I always thought it was Poland and misogyny. By the way, we're in the top 10 Polish podcasts, so we're allowed to say this. That's a fact. But Bartek, we're talking about movies. We recommend a movie. There's a cycle. You recommend a movie.
That's right.
I recommend a movie. And then the listening people, that's right, you people listening right now, you can recommend a movie. We do it on the podcast. This is our little movie club. We get together each week and see what weirdo pick somebody gave us.
What do you mean by you people?
Oh, is that a Polish thing? I'm so sorry.
No, you said you people to the listening people.
You freaks out there.
Ryan's pointing at the glass of water.
I'm pointing at the glass of water on Bartek's table because you're like water to me. I can't get enough. But we are not alone. We have brought in some guests, some people that we've had interactions with on social media for a very long time. We've circled around these guys saying like, oh, maybe one day we'll get on each other's podcasts, and then nobody did anything. Like they didn't do anything, nor did we. And then one day, just like Edward Woodward, I demanded the trigger be pulled. And we have got some of the FilmBusters on here. We have our good friends Ben and Paul from the FilmBusters Podcast. Hello, gentlemen. How are you doing?
Hello.
I'm very good, thank you.
Yeah, delighted to be here. Absolutely delighted to be here. I've got to say, that was the strangest experience because I didn't know if we were supposed to stay quiet while you were talking. I didn't want to appear rude and say something if we weren't supposed to say anything yet.
So spoiled the surprise.
We were just sitting on our hands here.
How British. They didn't know whether to talk or not out of sheer politeness.
We were waiting the line.
They stayed silent.
I'm relieved that you didn't. I would have screamed if you did.
Bartek would have really got upset.
I can't help it.
He can't help himself get angry.
I thought of a funny line before, but Ryan kept talking, so I couldn't say it.
But please introduce yourselves. Let everybody know who's who and what you guys do on your podcast.
After you, Ben.
No, go on, Mr. Host.
Okay, my name is Paul, and I'm from FilmBusters, and I'm from the United Kingdom. Hello.
Oh. The United Kingdom. Whoa.
The United Kingdom.
Oh.
Very controversial words. I'm from England, and I'm Ben, and I'm the rough around the edges version of Paul.
You have a third
Apparently
host.
FilmBusters.
You have a third host who can join us. Adam, is he from Britain? by any chance? Just to even it out for you guys. You have all three of them covered for you.
He is from another planet, Adam is. He's
He
from
is.
a very dry, arid
Cold-blooded.
planet where cold-blooded, leathery skin, doesn't understand human emotions.
He's very
connections.
lucky.
No, he's
Balances
Welsh.
out the podcast well. He's Welsh, yeah. I don't think we have any Welsh listeners that will offend. If we do, apologies.
But we do. We have a big Welsh
Oh, dear.
listenership. They love our funny last names. They go, oh, their last names are funny like our townships. They're very funny. They have a good giggle. They say, Slowinski, that is 3 eyes. That's a short amount of letters. Oh, man, giggle, giggle. But FilmBusters, what do you guys do? Do you bust the films? Are they haunting you?
They are. Some of them haunt us terribly.
Oh, absolutely. We did Cats last year. That very much haunted us.
Yeah. That, Meg, Tomb Raider, Hot Ticket to Hawaii. We've done all the absolute classics. But our new shtick over the last year or so has been doing films by rounds. So we pick a year, and then each of us picks a film from that year to cover. And we're currently doing 1951, courtesy of our mutual friend Julio. And that's quite an experience because we don't normally do older films. So it's been a bit of a interesting time for us, eh?
Nice to be thrown back, for sure.
Any ones in particular you guys have been chewing through lately?
Well, my
Streetcar Named Desire.
Oh,
Yes.
we covered
Oh,
that.
yeah.
We covered that on the podcast. Not the Alec Baldwin edition of the film, the superior version, but
Yes,
with
we
John
talked
Goodman.
about this on our episode, that you
did.
and Julio were talking about Alec Baldwin. I was not aware that he ever played Kowalski.
Yeah, there's a film version, and John Goodman's in it as well. And I want to say Jessica Lange is in it as well. Yeah, it's actually pretty decent. I mean, it's not. I mean, I joke, it's not the original, but it is pretty decent. And yeah, John Goodman is fantastic as always in it. But yeah, that
Who's
exists.
Goodman? John Goodman must play Mitch.
Yeah, of course he does.
Yeah.
And
Right, yeah.
your favorite king, John Goodman, King Ralph. He was the king
Yes.
of England one time. Remember that? That was the thing that happened.
Your historical knowledge is far better than ours. We can say that off the bat now.
Fair enough.
I think we can.
Fair enough.
I think we definitely can.
I get, but you guys are covering films. You're going in those brackets. I love that. I've always thought about if we every now and then do like a themed month. We did a month where we did nothing but dog movies.
It used to be every February.
Yeah,
was a theme.
we did a
that's
month. We do a spooky month. I do like having those themed things, but
Yeah.
we are here to talk about a movie that I recommended for our discussion today. And for everyone out there, we are going through Breaker Morant from 1980, a true story, a war film, a legal drama as well. If you have not seen it for yourselves, I highly recommend you go through it. It is available at places. As of today, I had a quick look. Somebody uploaded it to YouTube. But if you can find a better way of watching it, do so. On Australia, it's on Netflix. I don't know where in the mighty UK this was found, but I'm sure it's
YouTube,
available.
I think, for us too, right?
Oh.
Is that how
Yeah,
you watched
YouTube.
it, Paul? And it
Yeah,
was
I
good
watched it on
quality.
YouTube, yeah.
It was
Yeah.
good quality rendering.
Proper quality, but it is available. Bartek, if you could just give a quick rundown for those who need a little bit more of a convincing to watch Breaker Morant. How would you summarize this? What's the pitch?
3 naughty boys killed a couple of possibly nicer boys and a German. And
And the German,
Oh, yes.
that nasty
no,
German.
okay. So 3 soldiers who are fighting in the how's it pronounced? Boer
Yeah, Boer War.
Boer War in 1990 or 1901.
You're struggling. 1901.
9001.
1901 1001 AD. They executed 3 Boer soldiers and a German missionary under what they assumed, or we think they assumed, were orders that they don't have to hold prisoners.
Yeah.
And they are being put on trial for war crimes and they are defending themselves with the help of a Australian lawyer.
Mm-hmm. And they're having to go up against a British tribunal who are holding them to certain political and societal standards.
Yeah, and the point of the film is kind of the hypocrisy on both sides, but also, this kind of interesting battle of wits is happening.
A great way to sum it up as well is, have you ever heard of the Nuremberg defense? It is I was just following orders. It's the Nuremberg defense, but way, way before, and instead of being judged by the victims, it's being judged by your peers, by your own higher-ups. That's the rather interesting wrinkle of Breaker Morant. It is not the same as the Nuremberg defense in terms of like the Jews and other people are gathering these soldiers and trying them for their war crimes. It is their own people. It is the British and also the Australian in part as well.
It's an interesting.
That's a way of just snagging you in there.
It's an interesting twist on what you have in like the more modern day times, where it's like, oh, the people who are in the same faction as you will have your back, like kind of. Not to get too topical, but like the brothers in blue, something like that. This is kind of like a twist on that, where it's, oh no, the people on your side are specifically, putting you on trial in the middle of the war.
So, FilmBusters, do you guys have any familiarity or history with this film and or the events told within it?
I have no knowledge of the war at all. I don't know about the actual situation between the case against them as well, so it is all very fresh to me. I'd never even heard of Breaker Morant, the actual film as well, so it was all very exciting to go into this.
Likewise, when Paul told me the name of the film that you had suggested, I had no idea. I didn't know what Breaker Morant was, didn't know that it referred to a person. So it was all completely new to me, and when we're talking in this episode, it's going to be interesting to know how pre-informed you guys were before watching this, to see how that influenced how you felt about what was going on, because I had no idea. All of it was very fresh all the way through, very new. And I knew, broadly speaking, about the Boer War, but not too much.
Bartek, how about you?
Very little familiarity with the Boer War as well. I'd heard the title before, and I didn't know much about it, but I assumed, just because of Australian culture, that the title referred to a person, and the first part of the name is kind of their like outdoorsy profession. It just felt like a very old Australian kind of thing.
We love a nickname. We love a good nickname.
Interesting.
Waltzing Matilda and all that. So when I heard Breaker Morant, I'm like, oh, I bet it's like horse breaking or something. And and I was right.
Yes, we love rough and tumble heroes and figures, and we like to make legends out of notorious figures. Iconically, Ned Kelly, who was one of the first people ever made a film about in film history, was Ned Kelly.
Is that so?
Yes, one of the first feature films was about Ned Kelly. Like back in the day, Australia was one of the pioneers of cinema as well. People forget that, but we did some stuff with cameras and lenses. But for you, Bartek, were you aware of the film at all, and or anything more about Breaker Morant himself?
No, I didn't. I didn't even know this was a courtroom drama until I went on Netflix and I saw the tag, and I'm like, "Ooh, now my interest is piqued."
Oh, peaky.
Yeah, I just knew that this was a famous film because I'd heard the title before.
So for myself, I am familiar with this. I have seen the film before. I have a fascination with war stories in general. I like watching them. I like watching films and documentaries. I'm not a war history buff, but I like watching things like Patton or Gallipoli, or even TV show-wise, Space Above and Beyond. These pieces of media that delve into the morally grey and or bankrupted world that war puts people through. We jokingly say this a lot on the podcast, but it is a true statement nonetheless, and I mean this sincerely. The fourth series of Blackadder is one of my favorites because although a comedy, it also explores that very, very, very well and in a deeply nuanced way. Mm-hmm. But it's one of my favorite. Like, I really do enjoy that. So Breaker Morant for me is a film that I was aware of. I wasn't aware of the events of it before watching the film. I knew the name, Breaker Morant. He is a figure that is kind of lionized and kind of worshipped and kind of just... There's a mythos to him, like with many Australian figures from this time period as well, some of which are even on our money. for instance. We also love a good bush poet. Banjo Patterson is a guy that is on our $10 note, and he was similar, like a bush poet guy, and explorer, and we love these type of things. So even if I hadn't seen the film, I knew of Breaker Morant because Australian history has just a deep affinity towards figures like him, and or even more notorious, like I said, Ned Kelly. These figures that to most people you go, oh, they're scum. But to us Aussies, we go, no, but you see, they were misunderstood scum. But
yeah.
I've seen the film once, and it is deeply regarded here. It is one of the iconic war stories, right up there with Gallipoli. I said that to you last episode, where the two films, I would say, are pretty equal with one another in weight and relevancy. But I haven't seen it since I was like 16. So I recommended it for this because I just remembered, and I'm sure we've all had this, where you watch a film from long ago and all your memory retains is just, it was a quality film, a solid film, and an impactful film. And you may remember scenes or character beats, but the overall essence of its quality is what you remember the most. You've had that plenty of times.
I'm sure millions of the things I've recommended have been exactly that.
So, Bartek, I'll ping it over to you. What did you think?
I enjoyed it. Like I said, I enjoy a good courtroom film. Just last year, you showed me 12 Angry Men for the first time, and I was surprised. Like, yeah, of course, this is exactly what I'm into. Why haven't I seen this before? This one had a similar thing going on, but in a bit of a different way. Like, that one was more, kind of just the information being liberally handed out to you to progress the discussion, whereas this one is more of a, exploration of the whole context. So the pacing was a bit different. And this is definitely a film that I want to recheck out again at some point, because as much as there was a lot of information being given to me, sometimes I wasn't really connecting the dots in my head as I was hearing them, but I was getting that raw sense of like, yeah, you tell him, man. Like, there was that one point where the guy's like, oh, I do not know anything about this. And then the lawyer was like, that is proof of this fact that I said earlier. And I'm like, I don't quite know what that fact was, but yeah, you tell him, let him sweat. It's like there's this really kind of raw appeal to it.
A visceral feel. The film, even on a visual level, just has this grime to it, this grit.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, for you, what did you think about this?
I enjoyed it. I think it's it's probably a good history lesson more than anything. It's taught me something I didn't know, so that's good. Both Morant and Hancock, I thought they were really captivating. They were my favourite part of the film. I like the structure of the film as well. I liked how it slowly kind of unveils the true happenings of what the case is all about. And the thing that sets it apart, though, from these normal courtroom dramas is that no one's really innocent.
No,
because they're in war, and I can't really back these people because the whole thing is based mostly on corruption most of the time. So I can never really truly side with anyone. And it's kind of like, well, they did go out their way to kill these people. Like, they made their own decision to kill these people.
But there was a precedent set by the British to do it. So
but they still went and killed them.
The thing, though, what you say too is, and the film even says this: if we judge these soldiers or any soldier by the normal trials of man and of Christian nature and so on,
aka you killed someone,
even if it was following orders or not, we would be having trials indefinitely, and we would be executing people indefinitely, because on a moral level it's bankrupted. But we as individuals understand that's a part of what soldiers have to do, and it's just, and it goes on from there. Ben, what did you think about this?
Very similar to Paul on that front. I always find it very hard to sympathise with people in wartime when they are killing people. I know war is hell, that whole thing. You're sent off to war and you've got to fight the enemy, so you can't bring personal feelings into it. It's not about murder in the same sort of way. But I thought, just to put context into this, I think a comment that the director made is very, very telling about this film. Because Bruce Beresford afterwards said the reception to this film, he was shocked that so many people sympathised with the Australians, because what he was actually trying to show was not, oh, these poor men that are being put on trial for something that they shouldn't have been blamed for. He was trying to show the horrors of what men are capable of in certain situations, how it can completely change men. I don't think he actually puts that message across very well in the film. I think he maybe hoped to do that, or with a certain amount of retrospective looking back at the film, now thinks that. But in the film, I think there is this idea that they are heroic to an extent. And I think when I was watching it, I was critically able to say, yes, yeah, they're victims of a system, but they have done some terrible shit. Hancock, for example, when he just hopped on his horse and chased after the missionary and killed him, we find that out late into the act. And the young soldier, whose name I forget now, is like appalled by that as well. That's right.
Well,
he's appalled by it.
Yeah, and well, that's one of the things too. Like, his one is the last case that they have to deal with, the last part of it, and it's the most morally fucked of them, because it's like the others, it's like, well, you can see the rationale that has been enforced, but that particular one, it's like, yes, you can, but that one, and that's why it's like they grill Hancock about that throughout the movie. It's like, what really fucking happened there, mister?
Yeah.
So we can spin something from it.
They go hard on him. But I tell you what, regardless of personal feelings about these guys in the film, the thing that carries it for me, I love films that are all about dialogue for the most part. And this was fucking dialogue heavy.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, it was based on a play, which is another thing that I love. But what really drove it was, to an extent, Edward Woodward, with his explosive one-liners, which he has throughout. He's always great in any film when he does that. But Jack Thompson is the MVP in this. He's my point of identification. I don't know about you guys, but for me, he's who I'm empathizing with, because he's thrown into this situation, no preparation whatsoever. You don't know the details of the case. It's a lost cause. Go out there and try and defend these men. And when he's scrambling around in the courtroom and he's shuffling his papers, trying to make an argument, it's like, you are my access point, because I feel as lost as you do at this moment in time, and I'm playing catch up like you are. And he put in such an incredible performance. MVP.
That's Jack Thompson for you. To get into my feelings about having revisited this, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I really loved the visual presentation. It's very difficult to make a courtroom drama visually interesting. And this film does not step over the line of being too flashy for the sake of it. It's very mannered. It matches the rather droll but intense courtroom proceedings that we're having, because this is a very regimented courtroom. This is not the same as a 12 Angry Men or other like big courtroom dramas. This is very much stiff upper lip. No, you can't do that. I'm going to take my glasses off very gentlemanly to tell you that you can't do that. And I am a big lover of that. But one of the things that I really appreciated, what really hit me in the heart in terms of just the filmmaking, was the soundscape of pretty much every time something bad is happening to them, or foreshadowing of like, rumblings, you hear the peppy military music in the background from outside being played by the band, because that's how we introduced the movie too. We got this gorgeous shot, and everything, it's like, these guys are having a trial for their lives, and they're on an outside. The music just keeps playing, even after they've been attacked, after people have been killed at this specific place. Back to the music. Hey, that guy just shot himself in the head. Back to the music.
They carried on playing.
They carried on that gentlemanly thing. And to me, one of the most horrific scenes, one of the most unsettling scenes to talk about Jack Thompson's character, a real point of view, is when he goes to the dinner with all of the British officers, and they have the guests there, and they have that guy come in and sing, and even before he enters, you have the, oh yes, God bless the English will to strive and survive, and all of that. It just makes your skin crawl. And just Jack Thompson coming in there, and he's pouring himself out a meal, and they're judging him like he's not doing it correctly. It's like, what's he supposed to do?
It's a great shot, isn't it? Because it's from one end of the table.
Shot.
Everyone around the table is staring directly at the camera. It's great.
It is a marvelously constructed scene. Even the guy that they brought in, who's there to sing this gorgeous song, he looks miserable. Like, even because also one of the many things about this is a lot of things that aren't said but are being said. All of the servants are black people or women, and or all of these other foreign people the English have dragged into just monkey dance for them, and none of them are saying anything because that's just how it is.
Yeah, none of them
all
were even
look miserable.
Yeah, none of them were even looking at the singer. There was just like a background noise to them.
Yeah, the woman was, and she had like this haunted look on her face, and like, oh, it's a very tactile film as well. I had an absolute ball watching it. Now, if I could just gush a second about Australian performers, because for me, this has a lot of what I would call like the Australian actors of this time. So Jack Thompson is our lawyer, our man, our solicitor, who's just a local guy trying to get it done. And Jack Thompson is an iconic actor here. He has done so many great things. He's been in many iconic films. It's weird to see him without a beard. He usually has a big bushy beard nowadays. But if you
what's his big films, Jack Thompson?
So I was going to recommend. There's an Australian one called The Club, which is about a football club, and it's a story about corruption within a AFL football club. Another one that
here.
What was that, sorry?
There's a trend here.
There's a trend. There's another one I would highly recommend called The Sum of Us, in which it's about Russell Crowe as a young man who's gay, and he's falling in love with another man, and his father is Jack Thompson, who's also later in life, he's falling in love with this woman, but he doesn't know how she'll react to his son's life. And it's a really beautiful film. He's wonderful in it. Very different to how he is here, where here he's a lot more aggressive, right? He's fighting for his case. But that film he's a sensitive soul in that one. I love him in that. But he has a whole massive catalog. You just go through them and it's like, oh, bam, bam, bam. Another one I have to shout out, of course, is Brian Brown as Hancock. Bartek, you're a big fan of Brian Brown. You loved him in Two Hands.
Two Hands is the main thing I remember him from. Apparently he was also in Gods of Egypt.
He was the
Osiris?
Yeah, he was the father of the lead character, and he got killed by Gerard Butler, which is hilarious.
I vaguely remember
Gods of Egypt's a terrible movie. One, because they get Brian Brown, who's fantastic. Every time you see him, he's an actor. Go through his catalog. He's always fantastic, always a presence. That movie, Gods of Egypt, said, what happens if we don't do that with Brian Brown? And it's like, why bother? Why cast him?
Well, I'll just correct you. It's an unappreciated masterpiece.
It's an unappreciated masterpiece. But you are familiar with him from some...
I mainly know him from Two Hands, where he plays Pando, the leader of the little gang that the main character is part of, but also the antagonists towards him. He's great in that.
And what did you think of him here?
Yeah, it was good seeing him again in something else. He was very scummy.
Did the mustache give you that vibe?
The mustache very much told me, oh, here's Brian Brown.
Brian Brown's been in a lot of American productions as well. He was a co-lead in Tom Cruise's Cocktail.
He was in Gods of Egypt.
And he was in Along Came Polly, the Jennifer Aniston Ben Stiller movie. He's like Ben Stiller's boss. Something. He's been a lot, but and a final shout out, because there's many more I could go through, but the lead judge, the guy who's handing them down their sentence, the one with the biggest, bushiest mustache, that's Charles Tingwell, or as we called him, Bud Tingwell. Very beloved actor. He had a weird career where he did amazing films like this, and then he had a career slump for like a decade or so. Just could not get any work. And then randomly, some beloved Australian late-night comedy hosts, comedians, brought him on as like a little recurring guest actor on their late-night sketch comedy show. And it's like, oh, Bud Tingwell's back. He's funny. And then he was a major character in one of the most beloved, iconic Australian comedy films of all time, The Castle, where he plays their solicitor, and that just revived his career, and then he was just fantastic for the remainder of his life. And it's like, oh, this once prestigious actor had a slump for no real reason, and then was revived by a surprise hit comedy film, and then just went on. And would you be surprised to hear that before he died, he finally played Winston Churchill? He always looked like Winston Churchill. And everyone said, why don't you play him? And he said, I'll get around to it. And he did. He did. I loved him in this movie.
Him in?
What was that say?
What did he play? Who did he play Winston Churchill in?
I think it was like a TV movie special or something or other, something down here. But he was fantastic.
I am stunned that you don't mention Ray Meager, who is the only person that I recognised.
Yeah, Alf himself.
Yeah, it was like, what the hell?
Do you want
Alf?
to be schooled? His name's actually pronounced Raymar. So there you go. His last name is confusing.
This guy should have come from Wales if he wants it pronounced like that. The way that he's spelt his name and the way that's pronounced do not match up.
Alf from Home and Away.
Alf from Home and Away. Very jarring.
Oh, shit. I recognise him now.
Exactly. It was very jarring when he turned up because I'm like, you are
young
a soap star. I mean, I don't know. I know that Australia probably isn't very proud of it, but it is a massive UK export. It was like what was
literally
on telly every
we
day in our
stopped funding
childhoods.
Home and Away. We stopped funding Neighbours, and then you guys did, and then you guys stopped funding it, and it died, and now it's coming back again. So whatever. Like we stopped funding it like a decade or so ago, but you Brits like give us trash.
Yeah, we'll take all your trash.
Good when I was
we will take
Now,
all the trash.
For you, Paul, what were some of the standout moments in Break and Rant? Like you said, you weren't really familiar with what you're getting into, and so when it starts to unravel itself, kind of walk us through your experience and some of those beats that took you by surprise, or you enjoyed, or standouts.
Well, I mean, the thing that took me biggest by surprise, I mean, probably don't want to get into it yet, but the ending. I really thought this would be like a redemption kind of film where they're going to get their, like, finally get out, because I had no, like, knowledge of any of the history of this. So that took me by surprise the most. But I really enjoyed, in general, just the slowly, like, teasing out of the story and actually finding out what happened, especially when we find out what Hancock did to the missionary. And but I think the biggest thing is just, like, no one's innocent in this war, right? So, do you know, like when we're saying that obviously they're going by orders, so right? So if you're saying in that case that these people are innocent, then the Dutch soldiers are innocent as well. So it's like, I like that. It's one of those things where in any other court drama, you kind of want to back someone, but this made this film interesting because you could have backed either side.
Well, they even
though
point out
obviously you don't want the upper echelon of the armies to win.
No,
but you don't also. There's no real winners or losers. It's weird.
And Break and
I enjoyed it for that.
They point out that the Boers, the Dutch, aren't playing by fair rules. It's guerrilla war. This isn't a gentleman's war anymore. That is over.
It's a new type of war.
You could say the same about the upper echelon of the army.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like these soldiers aren't wearing uniforms. They aren't doing formations. They aren't men, they're children and women as well, shooting you. And so the rules are different now. We've made up the rules. The most beloved soldier in all of the empire has made these rules, and he's too cowardly to come to the trial and face up to anything.
They're following Order 303.
Oh, that's a great scene.
303.
That is good.
Excellent.
That is a good moment.
That is a perfect example of Edward Woodward shouting out lines and doing it impeccably.
He's one of my favorite actors. Edward Woodward had one really strong talent, which was he loved to play people who on the surface seem calm, mild-mannered, regimented, but very thin skin, and they're very angry underneath. Basically,
they really bridle up easily.
And also, he doesn't get a lot of happy endings, his movies. If you ever see a movie with Edward Woodward looking at the sun near the end of the runtime, you go, no, Edward, it's not going to be okay for you. You don't make it. Because this and The Wicker Man have like the similar endings of like, oh, I'm accepting my death. There's the sun.
I really liked, because usually when you think of, bush poets or like poetry from that time, you kind of think of like, very flowery language. You have to like kind of interpret it. You got to go back to the vernacular of the time. But all of his poems that you hear in the film are just very straightforward, like, I'm in prison, I don't like this, I'm gonna die, fuck you all, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just very
like
raw
limericks.
Yeah, yes. Oh, well, Hancock literally said a limerick at one point.
Yes, he did. And they did use Break Morant's real poetry. He was.
I actually Googled it after the fact. I'm like, oh yeah, that's dialogue from the film.
Yeah, and that was... Yeah, God. Ben, what about you? When you were sitting down, you're watching Break and Morant, you go, okay, these random podcasters who harangue me for not liking Paddington 2 want me to talk about...
Oh, God,
I haven't seen Paddington 2.
Bartek, harangue him for not liking it.
How dare you? I saw that cartoon when I was younger.
See, he followed my orders.
I don't remember anything about it.
You know why I like Breaker Morant so much is because it does the opposite of Paddington 2, which is it doesn't perpetuate the UK as some beautiful utopia. It says they're fucking terrible. We are. Paddington 2 lives in the world where, you know, all these army upper tier people went on and said, this is how England should be. And Paddington 2 came about. So I'm in favour of Breaker Morant breaking that viewpoint.
So because of Breaker Morant, the bear eats the earwax.
Yeah, bear eats earwax.
Yes. I've seen the teaser, see?
That's bad. But Ben, for you, you're watching this not knowing pretty much anything about it, not too much about it.
No.
So what were those kind of moments that you enjoyed as it unfurled itself?
Well, like I say, for me, the key thing is dialogue, and when a character suddenly reveals themselves through dialogue. And it was in the explosive moments in the courthouse where Jack Thompson was suddenly turning the case, or seemed like he was turning the case, or when you had an outburst from Woodward, or when you had an outburst from Hancock, where they were basically saying, this is fucking hypocritical, what you are saying makes no sense, and they were being shut down by the courtroom uppertiers, because that was where there was a revelation. It was like, even if we don't like these guys, which I did to an extent, I didn't love them, but I didn't dislike them. Even if we don't necessarily agree with what happened, we understand the hypocrisy. And yes, it is just one person's perception, but we do understand that they are being used as scapegoats, because who doesn't root for the underdog in a story like this, where those who are paid well, eating well, fed well, are getting off completely scot-free, and the people going out there doing the dirty work are having to take the whole brunt. But in terms of one definitive moment, without talking about the ending, it was Jack Thompson's closing arguments in court, because it felt like, and I don't know if this is true, but it felt like there were no edits, that it was all one take, and he fluffs his lines a couple of times, and I don't know if that was Thompson actually forgetting the lines in the script and carrying on, or if he was playing the part of someone who was fumbling over his words at that point. Either way, it worked, because it humanized him in that moment where he'd been struggling for so long. He knew, from my point of view, he knew it was a lost cause at that point, but he was passionately trying to defend these men. It always comes down to dialogue for me in any story. If you can nail dialogue and reveal character through dialogue, I'm with you. I'm
very similar. Or when a certain physical action or interaction takes place. I always go to the film Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal. Has a moment early on where he's just sold a bunch of stolen crap to like a scrapyard guy.
I know this
and then he asks him for a job, and the scrapyard guy says no. And then what makes that movie really great is he leaves, and then he comes back and asks why he didn't give him the job. And the guy says, "'Cause you're a thief." And his character just smiles, clicks his fingers and points and goes, good reason. And that told me everything I need to know about his character. A moment in this movie that really gave me that, a small moment, was when they were walking to the courthouse and the courtroom, and you have Jack Thompson is asking them all of these details again, and he's fumbling over them, he's dropping his paper, it's blowing in the wind, and he has this exchange where he goes, oh, this person, you know who this person is? I can't remember the exact name. Like, oh yeah. It's like, well, he signed on as like one of the first people against you. And Brian Brown, I do believe, is like, no, that can't be. Nah, that's not right. It's like, why? He's a good bloke. He's a good bloke.
Yeah.
And that told me about everything we need to know about the mentality of the movie, where they're naive enough to think that people being good blokes or the system itself is going to stay that way, and that it isn't going to turn against them. And if it would, it will be called out because that's not right. He's lying. That's not fair. It's, as we say in Australia, and I've used this term a lot, that's a dog act. Like, we don't abide by such low blow things. Like when one of my other favorite scenes, brilliant piece of cinematography, is when they do call the guy that they want, Kitchener, to come in. He sends his flunky to go in, and you get that comedy cut to bam, he's in the courtroom, and it's an intense close up of his head, like it's right next to the camera, and he's clearly lying, like he's like got his head on the Bible, and you can see in his little beady eyes that he's already lying about how he's not gonna lie. And that there was just another further demonstration of no, that can't be. He's a good bloke. That naivete, that Australian oh, come on, we're all buddies here. We look after each other. We're good blokes.
I guess that's a factor that plays into what we were expressing earlier about how the whole impartial thing didn't quite 100% land because, yeah, the Australian characters are the ones who aren't in the position of power. They're very much being, punched down towards, so we do find ourselves more gravitating towards them, even though, yeah, when you look on it overall, they did kill prisoners of war.
Yeah.
And very casually when we see in the flashbacks.
And we get withheld for a very long time. I thought this was a brilliant piece of business from the film. We have our 3 on trial. And for the most part, we understand why 2 of them are there. We understand why Hancock is there. We understand why Breaker is there. And the other guy's there too. It's like, well, George must have... Witten joined in. He must have joined in at some point. And yet when we ever see the flashbacks, because also this movie has a flashback structure, we always see him not wanting to or really being appalled by this or calling them out on the official written rules. And so you're sitting there going, well, why is he here? And then you get the revelation.
Just fell on his knife, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. He did kill someone in legitimate self-defense, and it's like, oh, he is a scapegoat, and it just furthers the point that Breaker and Hancock are putting down, even though the blood on their hands is far more legitimate. With this guy here too, it just makes the whole entire thing more of a circus than anything else.
Sure.
And even just like the casual reveal in the Where Are They Now, where it's like he served 3 years and then they let him go.
And then he wrote a book about saying "fuck you" to the English.
Yeah, but just like the whole big like twist of like, you are found guilty, you will serve life sentence, and then just he served 3 years and we let him go.
Because it was wrong.
Yeah, but just like the casual like, yes, we all go ahead.
I wish that they. It's fact, so you can't undo fact and put it in the postscript. But until the credits come up and it says he only served 3 years, I almost think, Jesus, he has a harsher punishment than the other 2 because he has to live the rest of his life behind bars as a prisoner. Whereas the other 2, if the choice between a life sentence and a death sentence, I'll take the death. Because at least I can go out quickly. So that bittersweet moment of him living but having to live behind bars for the rest of his days was undone by that. Oh, he was released after 3 years.
But here's the thing, though. It's even more bittersweet because it further underlines that this gentlemanly, oh, so magnificent system of the Empire is really broken to its core because they killed these men. Under this whole guise, they put this guy here and then quickly realized it was wrong. We shouldn't have done that. Let him go. And even to the point where the final shot of the movie, one of the final shots of the movie, to even just hammer it in more that it's broken and fucked up and doesn't work is Brian Brown doesn't fit in his coffin, just like he said he wouldn't. It's like they didn't even measure me. They have to jam his feet in. And it's just a quiet little moment. In all honesty, it brought that kind of dark smile, like dark comedy smile to my face of like, yeah, he was right. They couldn't even get his fucking coffin right. Yeah. So of course they didn't get the trial right. Of course they didn't get this guy's sentence right. Of course. They couldn't even get this. They couldn't even get his coffin. They didn't even bother to measure him. That was just one of those beautiful moments. Now for you, Bartek, you did see that it was a courtroom drama before you, but what was your overall experiences of it, and what were those kind of pivotal moments or highlights for you?
I think similar to what Paul was saying, just all the scenes that were in the courtroom itself were really what grabbed me. Like every time they had to take a break to, have a flashback or show something else happening somewhere else, it's like, okay, sure, this is necessary, but man, let's go back to the court. That's where all the good stuff happens. Like I also really enjoyed the lawyer character. He very much reminded me, and this other film built up to this character. We didn't see him until the very end, but when we did the Kane Mutiny, Miguel Ferrer's father, what was his name?
Yeah, Jose
Ferrer. We went this whole film, being on the side of these soldiers, criticizing the Humphrey Bogart character, seeing things from their perspective, and then this character comes along and kind of turns the tables on all our preconceptions.
Yeah, we spend like the last 40 minutes of that movie
being like,
this outsider character saying, actually, doing the Jack Thompson, actually, look at this, bang, bang, bang.
Yeah, he's defending them, but then you got that scene outside of the courtroom where he's like, this guy, he's lived his whole life serving his country. He wasn't being this incompetent. He was doing this, and it's making you realize, oh God, I had all these preconceptions that are just being shattered. And obviously this character in this film was in it throughout, so it was a little bit different, but it very much reminded me of that kind of performance, that kind of, the third party to everything that's really telling everyone what's what.
One of my favorite little details that was also sprinkled in later, but you can actually look back and see it, is the prosecution. The lawyer there too. He's also a little victim, because even when he's doing a good job or bad job, the higher ups still look down on him because, was he half Irish or something? It's like he has a little bit of this in him, so he's not. We can't fully trust him, but he'll do the job. Like, even that guy, you see him in the movie go from, like, I would never say he was properly cocky. Like, that prosecution guy, like, I would never say, like, he was, like, an evil lawyer character. He was just doing the job and evoking what the Empire wants of him. But even then, at some point in the movie, you see that actor just really have it in his face.
He wasn't...
That even he is like, damn, they're putting up a good defense for this.
He wasn't the one that was going like, well, I find that morally awful.
My favorite scene in terms of, because this film has comedy in it, as would any film with Australians in it. We do love having a little bit of a
they
comedy.
Heckle so many of the witnesses.
But agitated. Would you say he was agitated? And it's like, yeah, I would say that. It's like, oh, he's leading the witness. It's like, oh, yeah, so I overrule that. Oh, I'll rephrase it. How would you describe how he looked? Agitated. That's it. So fantastic with that type of humor in there, and the camaraderie that you do feel, because Jack Thompson comes in flustered. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know these people. The type of war that he fights as well is different to what they're doing. Even when he's finding out what they've been up to, does appall him as well. But he has to find, like, the connection to the client. And one of the characters we haven't talked about, but I found intriguing as well, is the one played by John Waters, the guy with the little scar on his cheek that was with Breaker Morant in the flashbacks, and we see him later in the movie. He's the one that gives him the chance to escape at the end. He's like, I could help save you, Breaker. I could give you a ship and you could sail the world. You could see the world. And Breaker's like, I've already seen it. That guy was a very interesting character too, because it's like he's going to have trials as well. His trials worked out fine for him because he's an intelligence officer, but he was fucking cold-blooded. When you had the flashbacks, he's just sitting there smoking and being like, yeah, so I hear you've been executing soldiers, prisoners of war. It's like, yes. No, okay then. It's like,
did you not think, speaking of the flashbacks, there was kind of a revelation moment, I think, each time they flash back, because each time that Morant oversaw an execution or saw as someone was shot, it always cut to his expression watching on when it happened, and he was never gleefully doing it. He was never indulging in it. It was always, I don't want to do this. Even when he did it in vengeance, he didn't want to do it, and his face was always crestfallen at the moment, which I guess was kind of saying, goes to the point of, in times of war, all bets are off. There is no manual. It's not as handsome. It's not as handsome as this. When you're out in the field. It's, you do what you have to do. And the Boers were doing what they had to do. Everyone was doing what they had to do. This came out 1980. Vietnam, man. It was topical because it was at exactly the same time as Vietnam, where exactly that was happening. Everyone was doing what they had to at that point. How could you possibly try those things by a court of moral standards? Especially a British court of moral standards.
And this was a trial. This was a moment where Australia decided to never let the British judge our soldiers. This was the incident. This was the moment where we separated away from that. So Australia judges our own people for what they do in wars and the military. But that was not the case here. You have that brilliant moment where Jack Thompson's trying to call that out, but then he just gets, no, you see, they're part of the British army system there, so they have to abide by it. Ha ha ha. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, brother, this is one of the things that is, and I'm sure Bartek, you can definitely attest to this, having grown up here in Australia and getting history lessons. One of the key, I think, psyche points of Australia is we were the victims the unknowing victims of the British Empire. Like, the whole of World War One is very much a tale of the British led us astray. The British used us as cannon fodder. We were scapegoats. We were the little brother to the Empire who was put in Gallipoli, and we were massacred. And we have this.
We very much identify with the Blackadder Goes Forth cast. Yeah.
We very much have this notion of the turning points for our mentality is through extreme tragedy that other people put on us, and very rarely do we put the blame on ourselves. It's always the British did it too. The British made us get involved in that way. It was the Queen or the King, or in more modern times it was the Americans. Oh, those dastards. It's always deflecting away and going to someone else or just some higher system of authority.
It's like our national victimhood.
It's our national victimhood, yes.
But there is a truth in that. There is a truth in that, because like all countries have their nationalism, and we're clean as anything. I think as a subject of the British Empire, I think I can safely say that everyone, Breaker Morant, Braveheart, all these films where people rebel against the British and colonialism, even if it's sugar-coated and rose-tinted, I'm for it, because we did a lot of terrible shit. And
absolutely,
we deserve our just desserts. And there is a reason, guys, that Paul and I over here have never heard of Breaker Morant, but you guys there have heard of it.
Yeah.
There is no interest in getting those stories told over here.
Yeah.
Would never have heard the story of Breaker Morant had it not been for you guys inviting us on this podcast to hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting cross of cultures, right? Because, you know, I find it an interesting tale nonetheless, but being Australian, it matches up perfectly with the narratives we have of like these good blokes. Just the system that was created by those darn Brits led them down to a path where, you know, no man should be. But it's like, at a certain point, and even the film argues this, at a certain point, you have to take accountability as well for yourself.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's like, well, if the system is enforcing a certain worldview, a certain view of like how military procedures works, where their whole thing is, look, it's not a written rule, but everyone does it, it's fine.
I keep flashing back to the scene where it was a flashback scene, funnily enough, where one of the characters was saying something like, "Mate, we don't have any room for the prisoners. Go execute them." It was just like, oh god,
calloused and
cruel. It's their equivalent of when the British are like, we have to sacrifice them.
Yes, we have to.
But surely that would be the case. That would be the case, though, right? It is morally reprehensible, but in the field at that point, it would be like, well, yeah, we've got stripped back rations. We've barely got provisions for ourselves. Taking prisoners of war, we can't just execute.
Honestly, yeah, the mentality is really fascinating. Like, even when we finally got the flashback where, you know, the boas were being lined up for the execution, just the fact that they were like calmly walking up to the spot where they would get shot, you know, standing still and ready. Obviously, one of them attacks George, but just the fact that they're not just shitting themselves there, it's like myself as a modern audience member, is like, oh my god, I cannot imagine being in like a war situation.
No, hell no.
The deaths, the executions are often not shown on the screen itself. We do have those cutaways to other people, other events happening. The main kill shots we get is the end with our two leads.
Yeah. Well, they tell them not to miss.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Well, one of them did,
not
both.
They
it
egged
was the best
them on.
moment of the film.
They egged them on.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think really holds the film together even more so is like that slamming of the British, but also just... The layers of that mentality and the gobsmack, like, jaw on the floor hypocrisy that happens. There's so many moments where it's like, we've been told one thing, but then you see in the courtroom they say the other thing. And I was just curious for you, Bartek, was there any in particular that you were just like, oh, geez, come on. Really? Really, we're doing this?
I mean, yeah, the one that flashbacked me, but it wasn't a moment of hypocrisy, but we really have to give it up for the real Breaker Morant, for like, that was the perfect Bible quote to put on your epitaph.
Oh yeah,
yeah, definitely.
The people on your side, they're gonna fuck you over, basically.
That was a good one. One of my gobsmack moments was you have that conversation about we have to be careful, especially with the German that was murdered, because we know the Germans will find any excuse to screw us over. So we want to tide them over and be gentle to them and treat them well. And then when Breaker Morant is going through why they would have to have executed the German, and Germans are known for this behavior and they're known to ally, they then turn around and like, how dare you say such things? How could you think that the Germans would want to do anything like that? You're costing us a potential allyship with these fine folks. And it's like, you pieces of shit.
Yeah, when they initially said and they murdered a German missionary, I was not passing in my head that missionary meant a man of God or anything like that. So when we finally did see that he was a man of God, it really hit me oh, they killed someone who wasn't even a fighter.
No, and
but so clarify for me why they killed him. I think I understood it. My understanding was because he went in and spoke with them.
Prisoners, and Breaker Morant was already concerned that this guy could have been a spy. He could have been somebody distributing information, and his main reasoning as to why, again, goes to personal vendetta, is the missionary provided information that did lead to the eventual ambush of the guy that Breaker is seeking revenge for in the first place. So he already doesn't like this guy. He already doesn't trust him. But this moment here where he speaks to these prisoners was the final straw that broke the camel's back. He's like, I told you not to speak to them. I gave you all of these chances, no more chances. And off they go to kill him. So we never get to know if any of that was true. If that guy did do these things, we don't get to know.
If he was just being completely honest, I'm a man of God, they wanted to talk to me, so I did.
I talked to them, so I did. I will be honest, because they don't reveal him for a while either. Again, this film has amazing restraint with those key pieces of information. I actually like the flashbacks. They never got in the way of the courtroom drama for me, but I can understand why. I know you, Bartek, you love just to live in the courtroom, in the trials and stuff.
They served a purpose. They established context, so I can't blame them for that.
But when they had the very first scene where they were going to that ambush and they had the translator guy who eventually is one of the witnesses.
Yeah.
I thought he was that missionary until he came out as a witness. I was like, okay.
Yeah, same. I thought that as well.
He was a zombie.
No. But Ben, what about you? Were there any particular moments of just you gobsmacked, or just you even have a bit of a laugh, or just guffaw at the hypocrisy or the mentalities that were being played here?
The big moment for me, which shocked me, but at the same time was like, well, yeah, of course, given the constraints of what we're seeing in this courtroom, of course it would be this way, was when they're all in their cells, if you want to call it that, and then there is a Boer attack, and they're suddenly all set loose, given their guns.
You've got to serve.
Fight back.
You're still soldiers.
And then, back in the courtroom the next day, and the guy's like, irrelevant, I'll have no mention of that in this courtroom. It's like they're just performing their duty. It's like, yes, they were performing their fucking duty when they killed the prisoners before as well, man.
Since when does the Duke of Wellington preside over military? Since always.
I'm not entirely sure, but I'm pretty sure that does have some bearing on the military things that are going on.
Since always. It's like, you piece of shit. Fuck Bud Tingwell. He is so good.
And also, who is that other guy? Who's that guy who came in towards the end in the courtroom? He was like a British. He was like a British Cockney. I was just there for a pint, so it might have been the beer talking. He was funny. He was some comic relief.
He was
at the end of the courtroom proceedings.
He was agitated guy. I loved him. He was great.
Yeah, he was great. He was good.
And he kept playing with that hat. He had that big pointy hat on his lap, and he kept playing with it like a child.
Australian lovable dumb guys are a great archetype.
Yeah, he's a lovable dumb guy. Paul, what about you? Were there any of those wow, they went there type moments for you?
Going back to the German translator, where I don't really know the history of the case and everything, but he, to know whether this actually happened, but for him to do that classic thing of turning against everyone and being that unreliable witness and being like, oh, it's so grating. And then for him to get killed afterwards because he was clearly showing holes in his story and getting so nervous in the courtroom. But I thought that was great. It's like, he just gets murdered and it's like, don't say anything else. Yeah. He's just murdered.
Yeah,
that was just shit.
Gone.
Get rid of the loose ends.
Yeah, that was pretty intense. And Bud Tingwell is so good as that mustachy, presiding over it. He's playing with his glasses all the time, and he looks like a little turtle. Like, he's just such an old fuddy-duddy. But Tingwell was a fucking hero. Like I said, there's a sketch show used to have him on for segments called Bud Remembers or something, and it would just be segments of him talking about his youth. But the thing is, he clearly doesn't remember much. So the gag is like, the more he's talking, the more outlandish the story gets, because clearly he's forgetting all of these key details. So he's an unreliable narrator. And I'm like, you love doing that, didn't you, Bud? Because here it's like, some of my favorite scenes were just him lounging around talking to his fellow Brits about everything going on. And another key moment for me in terms of just looking at it going, oh, okay, was when they lock in Brian Brown's story. It's like, okay, this is your story. You slept with these women. You fucked these two women. And you expect,
say that?
The British won't, like, the British will grill them because they want the case to be locked in. But then they're gentlemanly. It's like, well, no, we wouldn't want to tarnish these wholesome ladies' reputations. We won't drink them.
No.
We don't even need their names.
Wasn't it the lawyer that was like, now are you really going to embarrass these women?
Yeah, and then Tigger will be like, well, of course not. They're ladies after all. Like, we're civilized here. Now, to go back to the case, I want...
Bloody simps.
You're going to die. But I loved... There was that moment where it's like, oh, this is Brian Brown's story. There was a small window in that where I believe that was what he did. And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
no. I had a good chuckle at just Brian Brown running into, I think it was like the second woman's one, or whichever one. He's asking, oh, could I have some coffee first? I need some energy. And they just fuck immediately instead. He's like, okay, no coffee. And then he puts his gun against the wall and it wobbles.
He plays it off like she's the only one that wanted it. Like, all right, we can do this.
That was an amazing...
I admire his stamina. I do.
That was truly, truly amazing piece of business.
Just to look back to something that you were saying there, Bartek, about the whole courtroom thing, about wanting to return to the courtroom. I agree with you. That is where I think, even though it is important to have some of the contextual stuff in the flashbacks, the most enjoyable stuff was what took place in the courtroom. Yeah,
like I was saying earlier, it's like the childish rawness of like, yeah, give me those moments.
Yeah,
give me those moments. But this was a play originally, right? So
yes.
I wonder how much of the play was entirely in the courtroom. Like, I can't imagine they kept cutting to reenactments. That they wouldn't have been able to do it in the constraints of a stage play. Maybe a second act could have been entirely flashback, but I feel like probably a lot of it was done through dialogue in courtroom.
Do you think they had the shootout in the play? The big shootout.
I hope so.
Everybody stormed in and they had
the lights would cut out. The lights would cut out at that moment.
I could see a lot of like non-naturalistic like location changing happening. Yeah, but
let me remind you, Bartek. Australian theatre. Do you see it happening? No. I agree. But in all fairness, you look up the behind the scenes and the director and the writers as well. One of the writers is Jonathan Hardy, who was, for Farscape fans, I don't know if we have any Farscape fans listening, but he was the voice of Rigel, the talking slug puppet alien monster in Farscape, one of the most beloved characters, who, by the way, himself looked like a Muppet. If you look up Jonathan Hardy's picture, he's the bushiest eyebrows you've ever seen on a human person ever. They're very big. But they went out of their way
of that character.
Yeah, they went out of their way to even go further into the research of Breaker Morant and get these things. One of the things I'm just curious of, just production-wise, because it didn't bother me, because I also remember like back in the day, a lot of Australian accents basically sounded British a little bit. But I was curious for you Brits, where the only real British person in the movie is Edward Woodward, and pretty much everyone else that's supposed to be British is just Australians doing a hoity-toity accent. Did that hit upon your radar at all? How did you feel about that?
I don't know how you felt, Paul, but it was very confusing for me up front.
In terms of who was Australian and who wasn't.
Yeah, because of exactly that. I was like, well, wait, but you've got this one Brit on trial with them, so it's not really using Australians as scapegoats because they're subjecting one of their own. And there's like a throwaway line halfway through about, oh yeah, I sort of renounced my nationality and joined up. That was confusing, but also the Jack Thompson character, my understanding is he was born in Britain, moved to Australia, but has spent the last, 10, 15 years in South Africa. So I didn't understand exactly where his allegiance was. And while you're trying to navigate all the facts, the historical facts, the facts that are yet to be revealed to us in the courtroom, and have these two things playing out as well, it made for a very complex first watch. I think a second watch of this, for me anyway, would be much more rewarding now that I understand how you go from point A to point B, who all the key players are. Right, rewind, let me see that again now.
I'm with this
I
lad.
get that.
You're with this lad.
Yes.
Sure.
Paul, thoughts?
Yeah, I was more in trying to understand who was actually Australian in the film, not actually who's playing an Australian or something.
So pretty much everyone except for Edward Woodward is Australian.
Yes. Well, I didn't notice. I did not notice. So are you saying everyone who was in the courtroom?
Yeah, Bud Tingwell, the main judge guy, he was Australian. Everyone, I think pretty much everyone is Australian except for... Because also one of the things that held up production was the Australian Actors Equity got pissed off with this because they had a British person in it, Edward Woodward. See, Australian films like to keep it local, and one of the things too is it's like you have to have Jack Thompson in this movie if you're going to do it. There's just certain rules and stuff of that variety that Australia loves to still do to this day. We've covered many Australian movies on the podcast, and whenever we read up the behind the scenes, there is a lot of, you see the local state, whether it's Victoria or here, South Australia, had funded it, and they demand that you have to film it here, or you have to have this local talent involved, or you have to have this quota of local talent involved. So for a movie of this prestige, it's like, well, we have to have Morant be British because he was, and they want Edward Woodward because he's just a fucking fantastic actor. And so it was still a struggle to get that to happen, even though we look at it now all of these decades later going, oh, why would that be such a hassle? Look how good it was. That's just not how film industries work. I mean, I know it's a similar things for you, like in England. I especially know, like, at least from afar, like British TV stuff has a lot of those really strict rules about these things. Like, you got to fund this, and you got to have this here and this here. And it's like, the industry can just be annoying because it's like, why don't you just let them hire the people that's good for the job? Well, you see, Ryan, they got to have these actors in it, though. It's like, oh, okay.
All this discussion, and Ronald Reagan just still said, oh, I like this movie.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan loved this movie.
Does he?
Yeah, he loved it.
Apparently it's his top 2 films.
Let's never forget, King Charles is a big movie lover, and he also loved Blackadder. King Charles.
King Charles, I know.
Yeah,
that's a bit strange.
He loved this movie and showed it to his mum, which is like, how did she feel watching this? It's like,
that's like a snake eating its own tail, I think.
Those Australians.
Yes, good job. I never learned a thing.
Where are the cows?
Yeah.
Moo moo. I'm a bitch.
This can't be about me.
This can't be about me.
I wasn't.
I have a show called The Crown, which is just propaganda for myself. Lovely. Rather. But we've got to talk about the ending, because we've kind of hit a lot of those big beats during all of the court trial. There's lots of those moments of objection, overruled, how dare you.
Before we do, I just want to say that first cross-examination, it really set the mood not only for the lawyer character, but just like that rawness that I really wanted.
The defendant also, like the witness, tried to leave after.
Yes.
They're like, no, you've got to get questioned by the defense.
If it's not obvious yet, I'm a big Ace Attorney fan, and that was like big Ace Attorney energy.
You love your Ace Attorney. Now, Bartek, were you at all aware of the fates of the characters in this? Did you have that naivete of our British people of, it'll be a redemption story, they'll make it out, it'll be all okay?
I was fairly open to the possibility of maybe they get executed.
Oh, yes. And when it came to those final moments when they were getting their sentences bestowed upon them, what was your feelings and thoughts about that? Because we start with Witten first, and he gets a lighter one. He gets to live.
Yeah. Well, the whole execution thing, like I've already mentioned, like I think all 3 of the big fuck you points of like the poem, the epitaph Bible quote, and then his final words like shoot straight or whatever. Just the defiance he showed all the way down was just it really captured that spirit of like, okay, I can see why this is someone who, people today might revere for his attitude.
Yeah, when it came to those final moments, it has that dark gallows humor that we particularly revel in. Many, many moments of just Brian Brown cracking jokes and drinking and dancing on the table and making the statements about they didn't even measure me for the coffins, and Breaker Morant just smiling and smoking cigarettes and just like they know they're going to be die. They're going to die.
They're going to be died.
They're going to be died. No, they're going to die. They know this, but they still have this attitude of like, well, so be it. Ah, well, we made the best of what we could do. Like, hey,
Yes.
Jack Thompson, don't feel bad. You did your best.
Yes.
Like,
Don't carry this for the rest of your life. It's not your fault.
don't carry this. Look, you weren't the right lawyer for the job in the first place, but you did your best. Like, what else could you do? Like,
I'm just a small town lawyer from out of state. That's what it was when he rocked up. I'm not familiar with your country ways.
How many trials have you done? None. So,
Yeah.
no.
None of this type. Yeah.
None. I'm just a local solicitor. I do paperwork. And I that was just one of those things that really caught me even before like the proper end was just in another version of this movie, it would have a far more glib and morose approach to these men's impending fate, but instead it does have that coy Australian wry sensibility of just looking at this like it is absurd, but also we made the best of our lives. We still stand by what we did and who we are. And I'm still going to write my poems and write my letters back home and say what was really important to me. So even though it's a movie where it's like, if you said it to someone, it's in the end, they get tied to some chairs and they get shot and they're dead. And the final shot is one of them getting shoved into a coffin that doesn't fit. It's like, oh, that sounds really sad. But because of that attitude that is very prevalent within the film beforehand and with just us as a culture, it isn't. It's almost it is the embodiment of bittersweet in a way.
Didn't Gallipoli end a lot more tragically?
Gallipoli ends very tragically.
Is it like a guy getting shot mid-battle or something and then cutting to black and white?
It is an iconic ending. Yes, the film is about a guy who's a runner. He's a runner, and the final shot is him finally getting to do the run over the trench, and he's like mirrors the exact same running as he did when he was happy and free, and it's like freeze frame on the shot getting hit in his chest, and it's like a butterfly of blood. It's very good. Gallipoli is a great film.
I've only seen the ending, so good for me.
Gallipoli is a film where it's like you can't spoil the ending because it's like fucking nobody made it out of Gallipoli. So, but now our British pals, our lads, our boys, our chaps, if we're going to get fancy, you guys definitely gravitated towards the final moments of this. So please. Just lay it out bare for us and just talk to us over about this stuff.
So personally for me, go on, Ben.
No, personally for you.
So personally for me, like regardless of what you thought about whether they did a good thing or not, but those end moments just gives you that fuck yeah feeling. Like, go be defiant, be as heroic as you can at the end. It's like, don't even put the blindfold on me. I'm going to take it. You want to give it to me, I'm going to have it. It's like, I just love that. And just I really, really love the payoff of the coffin at the end. That was one of the most amazing moments in the whole film for me. It really paid off for me. And I thought it was good. That whole ending, it nailed it. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot. I don't know how we would have felt or how people in the UK would have felt watching it back then. But now, because there is so much anti-British sentiment within the country, because we're now at a point where we, particularly the younger generation, understand the terrible shit that this empire has been responsible for. We are all of them at the end. We are those guys at the end when they march off to their inevitable death. We want defiance. We want to hear him shout that, shoot straight, you bastards, don't make a mess of it. Excellent. And the brutal way that, you said it, Ryan, they don't really show any executions in the film. But then at the very end, they show Morant and Hancock's execution in all its bloody form. It's that kind of full stop. It's a defiant full stop on it. It makes them out to be more heroic than anything in that moment, I think. And I'm completely in their camp, even though throughout the film, I'm constantly like, well, morally you're a little sketchy anyway. I know that all the big players are, but at the end, I'm with you. You are heroes. But I do think that is potentially the film's view and how they are portrayed in the film, because my limited understanding, is that the facts in real life are not necessarily so crystal clear, and that Morant might have actually been a bit more of a tyrant than the film projects him as being. That he might have killed a few more innocent people in wartime, but in a more gung ho way. But within the constraints of the film, I am with him and them.
Yeah, the most poignant moment was a moment of improvisation, and later found out an actual true thing as well, where they hold each other's hands as they walk towards where they're going to be shot.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
just such it's one of those things where once you see that happen, you go, of course, that's a perfect piece to really tie the bow on all of this. Like that simple gesture between these two men of solidarity and just understanding and one last time of physical connection, it was just breathtaking. And another moment of when they get shot, their death rings out. We hear it. We see it echo out, and we see the reactions of the people left. And they know what's happened is wrong. And yet it's happened. That's just how it is, and it's over now. And like I said, and like we've all praised, the coffin bit at the end, it just, what a way to end it. That's just really surmises the whole entire arguments made within the movie as well. And just, yeah, the little appetite, like the little things of what happened to them afterwards was also great to see. Like, yeah, that guy, the kind of really morally scummy guy who gave Breaker the chance to escape, he's fine. Like he said he would be.
He's doing all right.
He's fine. He's a good man, and he's doing okay. And then, that guy, he got freed, and he wrote a book that was just basically about the accounts of this, saying that the British suck. And you go, yeah, what a hero. He said the British suck, and we all agree on that. But
we do all agree. We agree with that.
Yeah, very, very powerful. I'm glad that we all got something out of this. I wasn't too sure how it all feel about it, but I just recommended this because of that overall sensation that I was left with all those years ago of this was a solid movie. Like, this was one of those really powerful films, but I wanted to give it a revisit, and I wanted to visit it with a bunch of people to really have a chance to bounce off and see what all of these other perspectives are. Because also, like I said, I have a bit of an affinity towards these stories that really get into the mud of what war does to people. Jack Thompson's speech about that is really great about they aren't abnormal people. They're normal people thrown into abnormal circumstances. And what does that mean? What does that make you as a person? And that whole entire speech at the end is one of those conflicts of interest when it comes to soldiers and comes to war. And we see that be explored time and time again in a lot of these war movies, whether it's Full Metal Jacket or Apocalypse Now or Breaker Morant, all very different films to one another, yet they still get it at the heart of that issue, at the center of it. And like with many people, it's like there's a part of you that goes, I know the military exists, I know the army exists, heck, I may even know people who have been in it, but how do you square away that's like a part of their job is to be able to just kill people? How do you square that away? And how do they square that away? And that's what they really get to. And back in the day, it's like you got to justify it through the great British Empire, this thing that will last forever, and we're right. And if we're not, you're wrong. That's the answer. You're wrong, and you got to be little scapegoats for us and our political ambitions and chess game of the world.
You know what sums up the whole thing for me? It's the opening of the film, where you get the opening few lines explaining the Boer War. And there is this brilliant line which says, the issues were complex, but basically, and I'm like, I love how casual you're being in your opening. So go, the issues are complex, but basically, you've actually written that, but basically. So it's like, we know you're not going to understand this, so let me just give it to you in a couple of sentences here. And even after that, I didn't understand it.
Let me give you the important points. This is what's relevant.
The fact that
previously on the
notes.
Boer War.
the greatest
Yes.
way to describe it too is the Boer War is often noted as the first quote-unquote dirty war of the 20th century. One of the first of very, very, very many. And I think this notion really ends with World War One, but we see it being reverberated here of the war of yesteryear is over now. The gentlemanly war, the war of honor, that's over now. And we often see in history books and whatever, that notion was completely tattered and destroyed and thrown on the ground with the end of World War One, where that was really, that dissolution happened there. And then obviously whatever we want to talk about, like World War II, every country has their different kind of versions of that. America definitely looks at World War II as that made us the heroes of the world, and we can rule it now. We're good guys. We saved those poor Europeans when they were struggling.
It was good that in the courtroom scenes we had a lot of, questions about like the nature of this new war. Like we had the whole thing about like, what are commandos? Like a couple of those lines when I was hearing them, I was like, these are funny because he's pretending he doesn't know them. But no, these were literally new terms. Like I kept forgetting that this was set in 1901.
Yeah.
Guerrilla war, a new type of war that isn't fair. It's like, yeah. And we even see other movies do that too. Like I love The African Queen, and The African Queen has that as well with Humphrey Bogart again, where it's like his character used to work in these failed little wars between nothing countries but being fueled by bigger countries, and he couldn't understand like, how does that work? And it's like, buddy, it really, really, really works a lot more like that now. Whoopsies. But I highly recommend the film. I say, everyone, if you haven't watched it and you've just listened to this, boy oh boy, there's still so much we haven't sunk our teeth into, but it's worth a watch. From my point of view, Bartek, you recommend?
Yeah, really good film, really great, but it's old, so
But it's old. It's old and has that crunchy audio sound.
It's really not that old. Mr. Scarface is older than this.
No. But it looks old because it's old-timey.
No, it doesn't look that old. It's really good. Like I said, if you can have a film that is, I guess we can say intellectually as engaging as this and still has, like, genuine fuck yeah moments, like, that's a big recommendation.
FilmBusters, recommendations from you?
Go on, Paul.
Recommendation from me. Yeah, I say it's a good film. Especially going into it not knowing anything about the case or really the war, and it could be as much a history lesson as just an interesting film about some kind of interesting characters, I guess, and the morality of what it all means behind that. I enjoyed it.
And I would say, if you are going in cold, although you won't be, if you've listened to this podcast, you've just heard everything. But if you don't know much about it, do a little research before you watch it, because I think it would help. I think it would help to just know, even if you know the ending, I don't think it would squander the experience of watching the film necessarily. If you know that they're found guilty, I don't think it would squander the experience. But particularly for British subjects, you've got to watch it because you need to be educated on things like this, because the Empire is not telling you about this stuff. So get it seen.
Well, according to a lot of the trivia, apparently they did change a couple of facts about the case. Like, apparently there was more than 3 of them, and the kill count was much higher, so...
And there was more things, there was more parts of the trial, but they make it into the tidy 3 for the sake of a movie,
and apparently,
which is what you do,
and
right?
apparently some of the characters that did appear in the film were actually part of the defendant team, but obviously it's, streamlined to tell a story.
And it's still a story about Breaker Morant.
Yeah, so even if you do your research, you'll be in for something different anyway.
You just said doo-doo.
Yeah.
But,
doo-doo, I heard it too. We all heard it.
Guys, just don't tell it. Brian, in editing, cut it out.
No. Amplify it, duplicate it.
Replace it with the words I told you to use in the last episode.
I won't. I'm not doing that. I'm not your bitch. You edit it. Wait, that's right. You don't edit these episodes, so I'm in charge.
Yeah, I have to travel an hour to get here. Man.
You have your own software. You have a computer. I can email you. You don't do it. But no, that is all we have. Now, we need a recommendation for a film for next episode.
But it can't be one of us, Ryan. It has to be some other person.
It has to be a chap a lad or
a governor.
Or a governor, yeah. Governor.
Or a person
Speaking
from
of
Fish
governors.
and Chips.
Or a bruv.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, bruv. No, tell us bruvs.
There's no bruvs. There's
soccer
no
We,
bruvs
hooligan.
in what
we,
we've
we
chosen.
have bruvs, okay? Leave us. That's our way of talking to you. Limeys, what have you got recommended for us? For next
Limeys,
week?
they went there. Because they've done an episode on Break and Morant, they're now calling us Limeys at the end.
We do call you that.
Give us a film, oppressors.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll
Talk to
take
us,
it.
colonisers.
Agreed.
You can call us.
Go on then, Paul. What are we going to send their way?
So, speaking of governors, we thought since we had a very Australian centered film, we thought we'd give you a very British centered film with some very British actors in it, and it's from 2009. Hopefully, you guys haven't seen it. I see Ryan hasn't got it rated on Letterboxd, so hopefully that means he hasn't watched it. It's by Malcolm Venville, and it's Ray Winston's 44-inch chest.
That's the movie.
That's the movie.
That's the movie.
Ray Winston's 44-inch.
It's not called Ray Winston's 44-inch chest. Ray Winston is the actor in the film.
But you said it like that was the title. You said, here's the director, and then you paused. I'm like,
I wish it was called that.
I can go for a film with a good big cup size.
I love Ray Winston. He's one of those actors where it's just like, look, I'm gruff.
Yeah.
He's a governor.
He's a proper bloke. He very much is, we'll talk about it more next time, but Ray Winston's that guy who's like, I wanted to be more, but I'm Ray Winston. I'm a guy. I'm a big dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a good actor, but all right, Ray Winston
Packing 44 inches.
44 inches. I really thought that was the name of the movie. I was like, you know what? British movies do have absurd titles. Like, they could do that. Like, oh, there's a movie called Ray Winston's 44-inch chest, and it's not about, like, Ray Winston's not in it.
I don't think I'm gonna be able to call it a proper name.
I've not heard of this, but I'm looking forward to it. Bartek,
Yeah.
Oh boy, do you think Ray Winston actually has a 44-inch chest? Do you think you know him? You've seen him and stuff.
Probably, I don't know.
Come on,
I haven't seen his chest.
It's Ray Winston, isn't it? But I tell you, it's got a good cast. You've got Ian McShane, John
Very good.
Hurt, Tom Wilkinson, Steve Delane, many others.
many.
It's a very good film.
and the others and the rest on Gilligan's
And
Island.
the rest, yes.
but thank you, FilmBusters, so much for coming
Thank
on
you.
and talking to us today. Now, where
Thank
can
you,
people
gentlemen.
find the podcast? Where can people find you guys? Where are you?
Where do they
Go on, you can do this one, Ben.
Oh, I'm no good at this one. You can find us on all the podcasting platforms. You just search for FilmBusters, Spotify, Castbox, Apple, whatever you want. You can also follow us on Twitter. That's where you get the most updates from us. FilmBusters Pod or our individual accounts. I'm at FilmBusters Ben, and you're at FilmBusters Paul.
Correct.
Sorry, I spoke for you. You should have said your own Twitter handle there.
I was about to.
Well, he can say the
My
third guy's
apologies.
Twitter.
It's because you said, go on, Ben. I thought, I'm just running the show now.
You could say my name. I don't mind.
Say my name.
Say my name.
You
Say
can
my
find,
name.
you guys are all over the shop. You're on all the podcast hosting sites. You're on YouTube, your FilmBusters, your individual like social medias. You have your FilmBuster thing in there, and a cute little illustration that when I see it as a small little thumbnail from afar, I'm like, which one's this? Like
Yes,
I keep wanting
which
to
one of
see. I keep wanting to see like the visual to be like, that's Ben, but then I'll be like, no, I have to read the name next to the little illustration.
We don't have that. Like, which one of us is the hairy sausage?
Oh, Bartek. Of course,
Yeah,
Ray
yeah,
Winston
well,
was Growl Tiger in Cats. That's why they recommended it to him.
Oh God, he was.
Yes, that's the connection.
Did he have 44-inch whiskers?
He was teamed up with Idris Elba. He was teamed up with Idris Elba. Oh, I
What
can't wait to watch
abomination.
Ray Winston's 44-inch chest.
Cannot wait to hear what you boys make of it.
Look, will you be upset if we come in and are really disappointed that it isn't called Ray Winston's 44-inch chest? Like, that's our first critique. It's like, it should have been called
Should we call the
Yeah.
title of the episode?
Oh no, we don't want to confuse Ray Winston fans. They're going to be looking for the star of Noah, Darren Aronofsky's Noah, where he was the villain.
Oh, I've seen
Yeah.
that.
He was the gruff guy who's like, I want to be on that fucking boat. God doesn't deserve to punish me. I deserve to punish him. What a movie. Darren Aronofsky. What a filmmaker.
The berries.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but you have. You're a good
there's
Catholic.
berries. There's berries.
But we can be found on social media as well. Facebook, Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. We post on there. You can hit us up and recommend movies to us on there or at our email address, which is
spitandpolished@gmail.com.
This will all be in the description of this episode, so you can click on there, listen to us on whatever podcast hosting site allows it, rate and review all of the stuff that we demand of you, okay? We demand it. You have to follow our orders, or else.
Oh, I'm just requesting
Or else
it. I'm not
execution.
Or executions happen to you. But thank you all so much for joining us, and for all of you people out there listening. Remember...
What do you mean, you people?
Remember to be kind to each other.
Yeah, you people.
Or else.
You people, you.